Would you take weight loss advice from an obese doctor?
No.
Not if you want to lose weight, no. So why are we here talking about climate change solutions if we can't even mitigate our own carbon footprint? COST should be leading by example, paving the way with its partners to create a stable climate for healthy oceans, thriving reefs for future generations. And here we're going to propose a way to do that, be the change. We are the Global Climate Change Policy Group. I'm Kristen from Stanford.
Adam from Monterey Institute.
Kelly from the Monterey Institute.
Devin from California State Monterey Bay.
4 students in 7 days, and we are here to change an international challenge with climate change. No small feat. We thought of throwing in the towel, but then it dawned on us, the Earth can't exactly throw in the towel. The ocean can't quit. We have one globe. So what can we do? We're not going to change international policy with a UN treaty. We're not going to change national policy with today's Congress. Where is our sphere of influence? We can be the change. As Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. Look in that mirror and know you are the change leading the way so Ocean Solutions can be the change to climate change. By doing that, with congruence between your words and actions, everything will have much more power. It reminds me of a professor who came to give a lecture at Stanford at the beginning of my graduate career. He was a climate change researcher, and he came to campus and he talked about the moral conflict he felt traveling internationally, huge emissions, but raising awareness for climate change. And he basically decided on a personal level, he and his family would reduce their own emissions by half that year, and half the next year, the following year, and half the next the following year. And it became a game, and eventually they offset everything. So his travel, everything was carbon neutral. His family's lifestyle was carbon neutral. And that one lecture made me realize the importance of one's actions and the congruence between his words, his actions, his personal life, his profession, raised his influence that much higher. He said that. Now, I did not go home and change my carbon footprint much, but I did actually internalize that lesson and stop eating any seafood off the red list. Before then, studying fisheries, I was so overwhelmed. What can one person do? The fish is already dead. It's probably not even Chilean sea bass anyhow. The chain of supply is still messed up. But that made me realize the importance of following your own words. So this is where we want to see the Center for Ocean Solutions lead the way. And imagine doing what you were already doing, Larry, Steve, Meg, talking to leaders, talking about your science, talking to all those students, and you have that much more power because your actions are congruent with all of COST's efforts, and all those talks are carbon neutral. So that's the big picture here, being the change roadmap. Devin is going to lead us off with the problem statement, gaps, and goals. Then we're going to get into the theory of change and collaboration. Adam and I will lead that. Then Kelly's going to take over and talk about how our ideas match up with COST's strategic visions, so our strategic goals, including next steps and the path to neutrality. And then Adam will wrap it up with our conclusion.
Thanks, Kristen. So here's the big problem. We're all quite familiar with it. Global climate change is one of the main drivers of the loss of coral reefs around the world. We've heard this morning and all know that local impacts just add to this problem. But it's essential that we attack the root cause of climate change, which is increasing carbon emissions. Promoting healthy coral reefs requires action from a variety of angles. We heard this morning about how to address local impacts and stimulate research, how to educate local communities. COST is also working on ways to adapt to climate change in the Monterey area. What about this root cause, reducing carbon emissions? COST has taken the approach before of taking high-level, top-down policy change approach. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this might have not provided the biggest bang for your buck. So how do we address this issue? It's important that we do. Recently, there's been a trend towards approaching this issue from a bottom-up aspect, and we think this is a great place for COST. COST members, are you sweating yet? No pressure? But don't worry, you're not alone. Lots of organizations, countries, large events like the Olympics, have dedicated, achieved, or committed to achieving carbon neutral practices. So here's our goals to fill the gap. We're going to tackle the root problem associated with coral reef degradation, carbon emissions. We're going to get ocean organizations on board with this to solve climate change. We're not going to dance around and leave it up to someone else to do. We're going to shrink the change and outline a tractable way to approach this and demonstrate how costs can lead by example. Now we're going to show you how.
All of this will begin in Monterey Bay, right here with COS, with the people sitting here in this room. COS itself will commit to going carbon neutral in phase 1, which we would like to see rolled out in the next 1 to 3 years, consistent with COS's plan. So, but before 2016, actually. And this is basically to position COS in the momentum that already exists in the Monterey Bay area for going carbon neutral. And out of this experience, by going, by leading and offsetting all their emissions, COS themselves will become a knowledge broker in this area. They will learn from experience. And this will be attractive for 2 distinct reasons. One is academic science and research can publish this as a case study. And the other one is that COS becomes a clearinghouse of information. The broker of info can convene carbon neutral workshops, get together lessons learned, best practices for the immediate partners, which brings us to phase 2. In the next 3 to 5 years, COS will roll this out on a voluntary basis with any of its core partners, the aquarium and MBARI, any of the marine institutions, and there's already momentum for this on both fronts. For example, the aquarium has done an assessment of its carbon footprint and in areas, places that it can reduce this footprint. And MISS is on track to be carbon neutral going 2016. It also is a great way that this COS could build community with its heritage harbor neighbors and maybe make all those offices together carbon neutral. So whoever the voluntary members are, COS would now be leading the way with this momentum that's already out there. It's almost like an environmental movement is coming. The waves are coming in, and COS has a chance to actually surf them, pave the way, and cause more change to happen, which takes us to phase 3. As things scale up and COS is a knowledge broker at a larger scale, more lessons learned, more understanding, then you can go out to the next tier, the next phase. And this is where we go to EDF, NRDC, Ocean Conservancy, City of Santa Cruz, all the foundations, COS Corps partners. And by this time, COS has more influence, has a lot of understanding. And as Meg and Larry said, people come to COS all the time with projects, wanting to partner and stuff. And by this stage, COS can say, you know what, we're a carbon neutral organization. If you want to be our partner, you have to do this too. Here's some best practices, here's some steps, and really pave the way. And this will radiate out until eventually all marine institutions will become carbon neutral. And then not only is COS going to be a training hub, but many, many others will catch on, and you'll be building capacity, so other organizations will then build capacity with other institutions. And eventually there will be an impact at the global scale of emissions for happy corals.
And so, to illustrate this further, we can really look at what COS's core kind of capabilities are. COS is only a small pebble in a great big pond. So even within Monterey itself, COS going carbon neutral will not have a big impact. But if we move on to COS's core network, so just those organizations that are most closely linked with COS now, we're already beginning to see a much larger impact. Really, the carbon emissions from all of these groups could have an impact both on the state level, the local level, the state level, and beginning to really make a big difference. And you move on beyond that, and you get a wave. You look at just COS's partners that you already have, and there is a big impact to be had. We can begin to see some real global changes happening. The wave will continue. The ripples will expand. And not only will this help strengthen partnerships that already exist, but there are so many partnerships in marine institutions and others that don't yet exist that could not only help with reducing carbon emissions by building this network and building this effort, but will also be essential for really scaling up all of COS's efforts in its other directions that you're moving, in land-sea interaction, in other coral reef efforts that are being had. And so we really start small, and then the waves will ripple out until there is actually a global impact to be felt.
Thanks, Adam. So how does our project align with COAST's strategic plan? Where is it a good fit? We know that COAST has given a lot of thought to project filters for screening proposed projects such as ours to ensure that they align with COAST's vision, mission, and priorities. So first of all, compatibility. Our project fits within COAST's focal area of climate change and further strengthens COAST's identity as a boundary partner and a knowledge to action organization as its knowledge broker for the transition to carbon neutrality for marine institutions. Value added. COAST can leverage its collective impact through core partners in the larger network to achieve significant impact in carbon emissions reduction. Feasibility. These are bite-sized solutions towards a big goal. Just as we will script the critical moves for COAST to go carbon neutral, so will COAST script these critical moves for core partners and then core partners for the larger network to create this change in this movement among marine institutions to walk the walk in the path to carbon neutrality and reducing their own impacts on climate change. Credibility. In this learn by doing approach, COAST will be seen as a credible knowledge broker about this carbon neutrality information within marine institutions. They will also have the moral high ground and that value added in each of the public relations that they're walking the walk. They're reducing their carbon emissions because we care about the ocean. Flexibility. The 3 phases of our project line up with the 3-phase timescale that is included in COAST's strategic plan. So immediate outcomes will be COAST's carbon neutrality in 2016 in 1 to 3 years. The secondary results will be COAST's core partners in the 3 to 5 year time frame, and then the larger network in the 5 to 10 year time frame. So the path to carbon neutrality. How can we get there? We've scripted a few of the key first 4 critical moves that COAST can start today on the path to carbon neutrality. First is securing organizational support within the Center for Ocean Solutions, which is key since you guys will be leading this movement throughout your network. The second is to assess current emissions and develop a reduction plan, and then commit to a blue carbon offset program for the rest of the emissions. And the fourth is to build best practices so that COAST can build the identity as a knowledge broker of these best practices, methods, and frameworks in the path to carbon neutrality. The next 2 slides will outline some more specific steps that COAST can take first initially reducing carbon emissions.
All right, so there are some very easy steps, probably lots of what you guys are already doing within your own operations. But this is just a good graphic to see where most of the carbon emissions come from in office buildings. And so looking at lighting, looking at the heating and ventilation systems, you really can find some good efficiencies and not only save energy but also save money. And so these first 3, heating, lighting, appliances, and office equipment, there are some really good opportunities and some good support to help ensure that those are as efficient as possible. So PG&E and other local organizations will help conduct audits and can also provide support for replacing old energy inefficient equipment if they find that is a big source of savings. For cost, one of the biggest pieces though is the transportation and travel. Because there are there are offices at the Stanford main campus and down here in Monterey, the commuting produces a lot of emissions. And so one thing that Kristen had proposed and that we think could be really helpful both in terms of cost savings and in reducing emissions is getting a energy efficient either electric or hybrid car that could be used for the commuting. And then you also wouldn't have the reimbursements of people using their own private cars. Also, travel is a big piece. Travel is essential for a lot of the work that COAST does. But it really is a big impact on carbon emissions. One staff travel this month to New Zealand put into the atmosphere approximately 2 tons of carbon. So that is about the same as 1 month of an average American's carbon emissions, or probably as much as nearly a year of Pacific Islanders carbon emissions. So the big places to save. And so really just before we go to questions, I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. One, cost is a small pebble, but it is a pebble that can produce a big wave. And so this bottom-up approach can really make a difference in the long run. And we started out the talk with the conversation, with the quote from Gandhi, that be the change you want to see in the world. But I want to change it to cost, you are the leader the ocean is waiting for. And so let's get started, let's get this moving to really help support the oceans from this largest threat to the coral reefs. And now we would be happy to take all of your questions.